The conversation that we're going to have today is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more expanded than maybe before when we would just talk about pro-life, because of how, in many ways, we see the pro-life movement touching on LGBT issues and getting involved in gender transitions and all these different things. But also, we've done a lot of great work here in Texas on the Life Movement Board. It's not over. If you'll indulge me, though, there may be some people in this room who have heard your name and are not aware that at one point, the folks that were praying every day at an abortion clinic were praying for you. So I just want to at least start there, and particularly on the live stream, there may be some people that don't know a little bit about your background, and remind people, which seems like what, 15 years? How long has it been?
14 years,
yes.
Yeah, 14 years in October.
But let's start there, and then I want to open it up a little bit more than just pro-life, if we will, because I know there's so many issues that matter to you now, but that stem from that and your courage. Tell us what some of those early days were like and why it was when you started to question your support for abortion, being a director at Planned Parenthood, and when it all started to change.
Yeah, so I went to work for Planned Parenthood in 2001. I was in college and didn't know anything about Planned Parenthood. I grew up in a pro-life home, pro-life-ish home. We were against abortion, but we did not talk about abortion. We did not, my parents were against abortion, 100%. But we did not talk about abortion in my home. It was a different time back then. I will say late 70s, 80s. It was just a different time. Abortion was not discussed in the media like it is today. Of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. It was a time when people were not proud of their sin, right? So nobody was wearing a shirt that said, "I've had an abortion." Nobody was standing at a podium and shouting their abortion. Nobody was running around waving a pride flag. Those types of things just did not exist. If you were going to sin, you were going to keep that in private. You were going to keep that to yourself. And so, my parents, I think, were just kind of like, abortion is terrible and it's awful and it's so hard to talk about, and so we just don't want to talk about this with our little girl. And so we didn't. But then I went to college, met a woman with Planned Parenthood, and at that time in our society, Planned Parenthood and abortion, the abortion issue, their talking points were, we want to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. And so when I got involved in Planned Parenthood, that was the messaging. And everybody said it. Presidents said it. Congress people said it. Everybody said it. The media said it. Abortion, safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. And so, and to me, as someone who didn't know anything about the abortion issue, that sounded reasonable, right? And it sounded so reasonable at the time. It was such a reasonable talking point that it actually drew in people who were kind of moderate Republicans. It drew in independents, right? But if you think about that talking point, it actually doesn't make sense, right? If you really think about it. Because if something is good, why do you want it to be rare, right? Like if you believe, I like pizza. I don't want pizza to be rare. I want it to be plentiful, right? So if they believe abortion is a societal good, why do they want it to be rare? So even their own talking points, when you think about it, they don't make sense. But on the surface, like these forward-facing media talking points, they just, I don't know, on the surface, they made sense to people. And so that was really how I got involved. And, I'll tell you, even when I worked at the clinic, we had abortion brochures. We had brochures for abortion. But even up until the day that I left, which was October 6, 2009, our brochures for abortion, we had brochures for contraception and woman exams and IUDs and all this kind of stuff, right? And those were all out in the waiting room on public display. You could walk up and take them. But if you wanted a brochure for an abortion, it was behind the counter. You had to ask for it. So even in 2009, when I left, they were not so brazen about their selling of abortion, right? About their support of abortion. But internally, things were amping up. They were getting ready to really push this abortion message to the public. And that started to change in 2007. And I remember the meeting. Planned Parenthood spends millions of dollars, usually every other year, on marketing teams to come in. They focus test everything. They do focus groups for everything, colors, fonts, verbiage that they use to women. They focus test everything. And they had done some focus testing, and that was when their logo changed. Their logo changed a little bit, and their slogan changed. That was when their slogan changed to Planned Parenthood, care no matter what. That was in 2007. And that was when things also changed in the way that they discussed abortion. So they told us in this meeting, in this management and marketing meeting, they had this marketing firm come in and talk to us. And they told us in this meeting, they said, we don't want you to tell women that it's just cells, just tissue. We don't want you to say that anymore. Why? Well, because about 60%, it's still this number today, about 60% of women who have abortions already have had children. So these are not women who are unaware that they're pregnant with a baby. They know it's a baby. They've had children before. They've had prenatal exams. They've seen an ultrasound. They're not ignorant to the fact that this is a baby. They know it. And so every single woman who, they were coming into our facility and they were calling the pregnancy inside their womb a baby. They never called it anything else. They didn't call it tissue. They didn't call it a fetus. We were, but they weren't. And so it was at that time that they said, we're going to match the language of the women coming in. So we're not going to call it a fetus. We're not going to call it tissue. We're not going to call it cells, right? So we are just going to tell women, we're going to switch the language, we're going to pivot our talking points. When a woman comes in and she starts talking about abortion, the majority of women who come in to have abortions have some sort of religious foundation. They have some sort of faith foundation. And so they said, if a woman starts talking about abortion, if she starts questioning whether she wants to have this abortion, this is the talking point that you're going to say. And I'll never forget it. They said, you're going to say, women choose abortion because they care about themselves, their current families, and their future families. That was the talking point. And I remember sitting in that meeting saying, That's crazy. That's not going to work. What? Like, we're trying to make abortion sound as if it's this altruistic procedure. Like, you're having an abortion because you care about your baby? Really? Like, that's what we're going to sell to these women? These women are asking us questions about the abortion procedure. They're asking us questions about their baby. Is their baby going to feel pain? What does their baby look like? They're asking us concrete questions that they want answers to, and we're supposed to give them that as the answer. And I thought, this isn't going to work. But I remember the first woman that came in and I gave that line to. I remember what I was wearing. I remember the scrubs I was wearing that day. And she sat across from me, and she had questions about her baby. And she had questions about whether having an abortion was wrong, whether it was a sin. And I said to her, you know, I understand you're scared. I understand you're overwhelmed. But women have abortions because they care about themselves, their current families, and their future families. And she looked at me and she just sighed and she sat back in her chair and she said, oh my gosh, you are so right. You get it. And I thought in that moment, oh my gosh, we have turned abortion into an act of compassion. And that changed our society. We turned killing into an act of compassion. And it has escalated since then.
Well, and look, in order to continue, and particularly to increase the rate of abortions, that's what you have to do, right? You have to convince people of something that's a lie. I think the author's name is Andy Andrews, but the title of the book is, How Do You Kill 5 Million People? He's talking about some tragedies from before, and you lie to them.
Yes.
You tell them something that's not true, and then you repeat it over and over. And, sometimes people want to believe what they're hearing because the truth is so difficult, right? It's difficult to think, and I can imagine as a mother, that the child that is in your womb that you're going to be involved in or go somewhere where they're going to kill that child, they're going to end the life of that child. That's got to be so hard, right? So you got to convince them of something else. And look, that doesn't mean there aren't circumstances where women, families have some challenges related to the mother being pregnant that we can't be compassionate to, right? And maybe be supportive of getting them through that circumstance. But, what other circumstance do we say that, ending someone's life is some act of compassion? We do see some people trying to convince people of that, people with disabilities, people that get older in age. We see these things sort of to creep more. But, I think part of that, in my opinion, was as technology started to increase and evolve, we knew more about the child in the womb. Ultrasound, all kinds of different science where it was becoming undeniable. I think there was some point where Planned Parenthood they stopped arguing about whether or not it was a baby or where life began. That sort of just didn't matter anymore because, that they lost the ability to counter that.
They don't talk about that at all.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that at all anymore. And in fact, they will tell you that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when life begins. It doesn't matter if the baby has a heartbeat. It doesn't matter if the baby feels pain. It doesn't matter. And because it doesn't matter, that's why and how they're able to advocate for legal abortion up until the date of birth, right?
Well, no, look, and I just want for some perspective, okay? Because you talk about 2007. I remember working on legislation at the Capitol and, trying to deal with safety regulations and, just all these different things we were trying to think of in the pro-life movement because, a direct effort, I was talking about this earlier, right? Some big bill, let's end abortion and the heartbeat and all this kind of stuff we've seen recently. I mean, I remember the first couple of sessions, we couldn't even get a vote for a Choose Life license plate. I mean, it just was, we were so way back over here that the opportunities to have that just, they just weren't there. The votes weren't there, and you wouldn't even try for something more than that, or you'd struggle to because it just seemed foolish and unlikely during that time period. And here you have, these marketing efforts. But I think about this a little bit when we think about the ability of one person to make a difference, right? So at some point you decide, and if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, right? There's been a lot talked about it. We used this phrase when we were letting people know you were coming to the event. What she saw changed everything, right? And it didn't all happen in just one moment, but I know there was one moment, but there was also one person. I don't think that Planned Parenthood has ever been the same since you crossed that line and came over to the pro-life movement. It's been quite incredible. And that's your applause cue, by the way. And I know there were other people involved, if you will, but those are tough circumstances to be in because I can imagine you sort of know, all of us know, oh my gosh, if I step out over here or if I say what's true or I challenge someone or whatever and it's just me, there's this whole, Goliath, whatever. I don't know if y'all have seen the building in Houston on 45 South, close to the University of Houston. It's, 7-8-story Planned Parenthood building.
7 stories, 78,000 square feet.
It's massive, right? And they're not done, but Planned Parenthood has been severely wounded since you left. Certainly in the state of Texas. I wonder sometimes you look back on that and realize, gosh, you had probably maybe a little bit more power and influence than you thought, but the truth was on your side. There were people that were ready to kind of embrace you, accept you, and support you, but it was that initial decision, and you were in the middle of it. You can think of people that are pro-life. You're seeing it. And it just became more obvious. So now here we are. We're post-Roe, right? We're, even I'm sure a day you might not have thought you had seen, even with some of the work that you've done, because it still seemed like it was uphill. And we've got 50 years, a younger generation, very pro-life. And I thought we'd have more struggle with the heartbeat bill, frankly, even though I was confident in it. I thought it made take a couple of times for a case like Dobbs, and it didn't. But the issue's not over, right? And Planned Parenthood, and this is part of my point with the broadness of this topic, Planned Parenthood's like, okay, well, at least in Texas, if we can't make money off abortions, what else can we make money off? Because that's a big part of what drives them. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So Planned Parenthood has been pretty severely wounded, since really 2011. So 2011 was the ultrasound bill, and that was a great session. I worked with Dan Patrick on that bill, and he said, what's the bill that right now we could pass that would really hurt Planned Parenthood? And I said, well, you need an ultrasound bill, and you need a 24-hour component in that bill, because at that time, the majority of abortion providers were what we called circuit riders. They were coming in from another place. They were driving in, they were flying in. And so I said, if you put a 24-hour component in the bill, they're not able to be there for 2 days in a row. And that will shut down the majority of clinics. That will shut down at least, 40% of clinics in Texas. And so he said, all right, let's do it. And so we got that passed. And sure enough, it shut down a huge percentage of clinics in the state of Texas. That was a huge blow to them. And then, because they couldn't charge for the ultrasound on that first day either. So it was just a money drain for them on that first day. The providers couldn't, get paid for it. They couldn't charge for the ultrasound. They couldn't get a provider there 2 days in a row. It was devastating for them. And we had a ton of clinics close in 2011. Then 2013, the next session came around, and that was a defunding year. And so that was when Planned Parenthood and abortion entities in Texas were essentially defunded from Medicaid programs and title programs, and that was huge. That shut down other facilities.
And to our point about them trying to generate revenue, I mean, having that access to government funding. And oh my gosh, the sky's going to fall and women are going to be dying in the streets and all the different stuff that they would make up because, it never sort of occurred to them, go out and raise your own money.
Right.
Right? Like the rest of us nonprofits do. If there's so much support for the issue you're involved in, then there should be all this kind of support. Let people privately fund it. But their connection, dependence, and ability every year, every 2 years to have that funding at the state and federal level was a huge reason why they continue to exist and almost really not be accountable in a lot of ways. And so I remember too, oh my gosh, I was thinking about Senator Hughes earlier. He was at one of our events, this event last year and several times, because it was kind of this who's gonna blink first when they were trying to finish the issue on the defunding, and there was so much pressure because we were so close. And Sid Miller and Senator Hughes were working to really eliminate any kind of loophole they could find, and so it drug out a little bit. But I just remember, gosh, we're so close. And Senator Hughes telling me, just trust me. And Sid was like, just trust me. Y'all hang in there. We're gonna get this done. And they did, and it was absolutely enormous. How many abortion clinics are there? I know abortion is illegal now. How many clinics do you think Planned Parenthood or any of these entities have now? They're not operating, or they're not supposed to be performing abortions. I know there's a couple of little, referral clinics, but they've been cut down to close to nothing.
Yeah, so there's there are some Planned Parenthood referral centers in Texas, but I have to tell you so I worked at the Houston affiliate, and so I was there, kind of a funny story. So I worked for the Houston affiliate. I was there when we were doing our $18 million capital campaign for that huge monstrosity off the Gulf Freeway. And so all of the directors were basically expected to give a very large donation to the building of this new facility. And so, like Jonathan said, it is 7 stories tall. It is 78,000 square feet. And the 3rd floor is just a bunch of ambulatory surgical suites. And those were built in order to abort babies, to kill babies through the 6th month of pregnancy. And so I had an office that was going to be on that 3rd floor. And so the CFO came to me and said, here's a packet of information, and this is how much we would like you to give to this capital campaign, and don't worry, we'll take it right out of your check. And so, I was like, okay. And he said, and if you give this much money, which is a lot of money, he said, if you give this much money, your name will be on the bronze plaque that is outside of the building when you walk in. And so when you go to that facility, there's this big like bronze plaque right outside of the front sliding doors. And my name is supposed to be on that plaque, Jonathan.
You mean they haven't pried it off
And
yet?
I'm wondering, I have not been on the property, and I'm like dying to know if they took like a Dremel tool and like, God, I don't know. But anyway, I do have to say, like, I don't know what they're going to do with that building, because they are not receiving any state dollars through, taxpayer funds, praise God. And now they're not able to do abortions in that facility. And so I'm like, what are they doing in that building, right? I know that they're doing some gender transition, some cross-sex hormones. That has been happening at Planned Parenthood since 2008. A lot of people think Planned Parenthood just now got into that business. They have not. We were doing that in 2008. We had our first pilot project of cross-sex hormones began in 2008. We were doing it at our facility. So this is not new, guys. They have been the LGBT movement, and we can talk about that. The LGBT movement and Planned Parenthood, they have been bedfellows for years.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that too, because I remember working on some court cases. When there's a court case at the U.S. Supreme Court, and some lower courts too, you can do this. You can submit a friend of the court brief. It's called an amicus curiae. It's a Latin term. And so there was a case, I think, on same-sex marriage or something related to that. And I was looking who's filing briefs on the other side, and I saw that Planned Parenthood and some other abortion entities where I was like, what are they doing involved? Maybe they're sort of helping their liberal friends or whatever. But I remember going, gosh, that's strange. And when I heard you talk about it and others, I'm like, well, of course. You should have thought, right? I was thinking to myself, you should have thought they would be involved in some of that. I see some of that as really a way to continue to generate revenue. And being involved in this destructive and dishonest area of people's lives, I think, is part of it. But it's interesting because now that movement, transgender, LGBT, I'm not saying that there's been a lot of popularity, but there's been a lot of political popularity and movement around it, right? As where abortion is, I don't know, depending on what state you're in. Obviously, it's dropped a lot here in Texas. It's not been a winning issue at the ballot, at least not statewide. And so you kind of see them, it's sort of an opportunistic kind of approach, right? If this helps us, anything to kind of continue to exist and to, stay relevant, if you will. And so I think, look, the death that's along with abortion is incredibly tragic. And you see some of that similar with the way that they're cutting up, parts of kids, just like they didn't care when they were cutting up babies in the womb.
Well, that's it. So people ask me all the time, like, Abby, why? Like, why would the LGBT movement be affiliated with Planned Parenthood? Like, they're not having kids, so why do they care, like, about people having abortions? And let me just say this. It makes sense when you think about it, because first of all, Planned Parenthood is chocked full of LGBT staff, okay? When I worked at Planned Parenthood, I left in 2009, I would say about 25% of my coworkers were part of the LGBT movement. So you have to believe it's even higher now, if it was 25% back 14 years ago, okay? So you have to believe it's even higher now. But both movements are profoundly anti-God, and they are profoundly anti-life, right? So there's something, I don't know what the right word is, ironic, demonic, whatever you want to say, but there's something really disgusting, unholy, whatever, about a person whose sexual acts do not create children, telling a woman who has an innocent child in her womb that they should destroy that child's life. And that's what's happening inside of these facilities. And so I was driving by, not that long ago, I was driving by that big facility that, by the way, if you go Google like a Mayan temple or like an Aztec temple, and you look at that Planned Parenthood, they're identical. It's really bizarre.
Oh, it's striking. And I'm from that area, so it's been a thorn in my side, to say the least,
Yeah.
when I see it there often. Abby, so here's a question we get a lot at these events. What can I do,
Yeah.
right? And as much as your words, our words benefit people, they're inspired and they're like, okay, I want to do something. We have the pleasure, the honor of being the last two on the stage of a 2-day event, which has been absolutely extraordinary to have you all here to think about. 6 years in a row we've been able to do this. 4 years in a row, Great Hills Baptist have been our gracious host. That's going to be the question on people's mind. And so a couple of things that you could suggest for people. We're post-Roe, but we've got these LGBT issues we're dealing with. We're making some progress on that. But what can the general public, what can our people do that are here today and others when they leave here and think, okay, what can I do now to make a difference on these issues?
So first of all, I think we have a huge misconception in the state of Texas that we do not have an abortion problem anymore. We're like, oh, great, like Roe's overturned. I hear this almost every day. Roe's overturned, and now Texas is abortion free. Every day. I mean, almost every day I hear that. Abortion's illegal in Texas. Well, technically, policy-wise, I guess that's true. Technically, we don't have any brick and mortar abortion facilities open anymore in the state of Texas, but thousands of women every month are killing their babies in the state of Texas through mail-in abortion pills, mail-order abortion pills. And I got to tell you guys, in all likelihood, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but in all likelihood, there's probably not going to be really any policy that we can pass to change that. Because what do? We're not going to be able to search every mail package that comes to a woman's home. These pills are coming from out of the country. The majority of them are coming from China, India, and Belgium. So we're not going to be able to go through every woman's mail that comes to their home. There's over 70 websites right now where a woman can go online. I could do it right now in less than 5 minutes. And I could order these pills. They do not check IDs. A 12-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old could go online and order these pills. They don't check their ID. They don't care how old they are. They don't care how far along they are in your pregnancy. You never talk to a doctor. There's no medical care, no medical consultation. And for $100, they'll mail them to any address that you give them. That's happening thousands of times every month in the state of Texas. So don't be fooled into believing that abortions are not happening here in the state of Texas. That's number one. They are happening. Why? Because crisis pregnancies are still taking place in the state of Texas. Why are abortions still happening? Because sin still exists. Because we are still people, and people sin. We are still sinners in need of a Savior. And as long as sin exists, abortion will exist. And so I don't really know that we're at a time where policy is going to fix what's happening right now. I'm not sure that we're at a place where we need policy to tell us what we're against. I feel like we need policy to tell us what we're for now. What does that mean? I, right now, am of a mindset where we need policies to boost support for women who are pregnant. We need strategies to help moms who are facing eviction, who are pregnant and in crisis. I run an organization called Loveline, and every month, just here in the state of Texas, we are preventing over 100 Texas moms from being on the street with their babies. We need the churches to step up. We need churched people to step up. We need to be the people that stand in the gap. And so, what can you do? Find out how you can get involved. Start a pro-life ministry at your church. Start a pro-life ministry with your friends. If your church won't do it, then get a group of your friends and start something. This doesn't have to be complicated, guys. But I am finding more. We just had an event. This is my 6th event in 6 days. So I was just at an event last night, and a woman came up to me and she said, "You know what? In our community, we had a daycare issue. We just had an issue. We did not have any Christian daycares in our community. So we started one. Me and a bunch of moms, we said, all right, well, there's moms that need good Christian, solid daycares in this area, so we're going to start one. And we're going to get it funded by churches." So they did. Just regular, everyday moms doing something extraordinary for women in crisis, low-income moms in their community. And those children are being raised up with Christian values. Those children are being raised up to know the Lord. How amazing is that? Just everyday people doing extraordinary things. That's what we need to be doing as the body of Christ. Don't wait on your pastor to do it. Don't wait on your church to do it. You do it. You do it.
Well, and look, that's what we want to hear, because you take the body of information that you learn here, the printouts and the presentations and the victory reports and the predictions of what's happening next. We all have to go home. We have to look in the mirror and say, what can I do, right? And instead of looking for someone else to solve our problems and to come up with a solution. And look, we have that type of freedom in our state and our country where you can be innovative, you can think about those ideas, and you have a climate where, and to Abby's point, is abortion technically illegal? It is, sure. And that doesn't mean that there's not value to that happening.
Absolutely.
That means that's a starting point,
Yes.
right? You're given a head start where some states, they're way on, they're having abortion flooded to their state, like New Mexico, who we're going to start helping, right? Because, but that also means the work is not done, and that there aren't women out there that need that support and help in innovative ways, right in your own community, right in your own neighborhood, in your network, that are looking for that support. And so you may not have to worry about going down to the court and fighting some of those things. You may be able to be in a position of now you've got the law on your side, so to speak, and now you can work on that heart side, that compassion side, that family side, that faith side to make a difference. So we truly do get to a point where we don't see this type of sin. We don't see women in situations where they're considering abortion. Abby, you've got a great organization, Loveline. I know you've worked with women that have left the abortion movement. I know you get involved in politics. You're raising an amazing family. You were with Kirk Cameron at a book reading. I just want to say thank you for how you continue, from what I can tell, to look in the mirror and say, what else can I be doing, as if you haven't already done enough. I see you at the Capitol all the time, and I see you, as you mentioned, 6 events in 6 days. It's a joy to see you lead.
That's just lunacy. That's just lunacy. That's just me because I'm crazy. But I do want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I am a mom of 8 children, and I think one of the most important things that we need to take away as conservatives, as Christians, is to get our children off of social media. To get our children off of these smartphones, get them off of the internet, Get them away from the dangers of social media and the internet and what is taking them away from sanity, taking them away from good conservative Christian values. It is trash that's out there, and they are preying on our children. These people are preying on our children, and I promise you, sometimes if your kids are on it and you're like, I don't know, it's so hard though, they're gonna be mad at me, who cares? You're not out to be your children's friend. You're out there to be their protector. And I know a lot of good conservative parents whose kids are out there getting involved in this social media nonsense. And you've just got to pull that Band-Aid off. You've just got to pull the plug. My daughter is 16 years old. She's a super cool kid in her private high school, and everybody loves her, and she's never spent a day on social media. And she never will while she's living in my house. You can do it. She has a real dumb phone. It does not get on the internet. She's not allowed to have a computer in her room. We do not have televisions, only in our one living room. We don't have cable. Guys, you don't have to have a home full of that nonsense. You don't have to have a home pumping that filth into your house. YouTube is not allowed anywhere in my home. You don't have to do it. You can do it. You can live a life free from that junk, and your kids will be better for it. And my daughter, who's 16, who a lot of her friends at that private school have social media, she tells me all the time, Mom, thank you for protecting me from that. And so they will thank you for it, even if they hate you when you first take it away from them. So you have to make those hard decisions.
Where are my kids at? Did y'all hear that? They're in the background somewhere. No, listen, and we open those things up, right? We have to be in touch with what we have control over first as a parent, as adults. Start from there, build from that point. Where is our influence? What is our expertise? What is the calling that God is putting on our heart? Every single person in this room that has been a part of this event these 2 days, you have a critical role to play. We cannot do it on our own. So we're here to educate, motivate, and activate you on these issues, but then we want you to go out there and do it. Please give a round of applause for Abby Johnson.